All right, welcome to the Big Business on Campus podcast by John Wall Street. This is powered by Playfly Sports and sponsored by Shorts Travel. We got a great show for you today. Corey and I are excited to welcome Michael Benson from West Virginia, our first university president on the podcast here. So we're excited to have you. Obviously, we've had commissioners, we've had ADs, we've had other sports leaders, but Michael, you're our first university president, so it's going to be an amazing show today. So thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's great to be with both of you, and the fact that I'm the first president is a real honor. So thank you.
Yeah, Mike, I was telling you offline, the way Michael came to my kind of surfaced on my social feed was I had seen in the fall, there's an influencer, and he can tell you exactly the gentleman's name, but who was traveling to 100 games in 100 days. Well, first of all, that in a concept, that sounds amazing. But as Michael will tell you, this guy's going out and like partying after games and then getting up in the morning the next day and driving to the next stop. Wild times. In any event, Michael said, when he came to West Virginia, Michael hosted him. And I said, this guy gets it. Like, this is a president who understands modern media. He understands the power of influencers. And I was excited to reach out and talk to him. He's a real champion for sports as well, as you guys will learn. So, Michael, thanks for joining us today. And maybe just for you can tell the audience who that influencer was for some who might be aware.
Yeah, so it's a kid named an adult named GFed is his handle, but he's got, I think, 500,000 followers on Instagram, has a very ardent following on YouTube. But he used to try and sneak into stadiums. He still does that once in a while. Then I think he got cited and arrested at Clemson. But he'll sneak into the stadium and start a stopwatch, and he times how long it takes him to get evicted. So, I'd seen that he snuck into Coastal Carolina, and somebody sent it to me. I'd heard of him. So I thought, here's a chance to send him a note and say, look, GFed, you don't have to sneak in. Come and be our guest in the president's box when we play. I think we were playing App State, so it was a big game. And it was an ESPN game at night. And he showed up, and when I told my kids that GFed was going to be at Coastal, they just thought, their dad had street cred immediately. So we had a great time. We stayed in touch. And the next thing I know he's doing is, as Corey said, I don't know how he did it, 100 stadiums in 100 days. And he comes rolling into West Virginia. We had him down on the field. He got in with some of our frat boys here in Morgantown. Went and hung out with them, went to a couple of bars, slept on someone's couch. And he details all this in great detail on YouTube. And then he pulled out the next morning and went to his next venue. But, the reason I did that was not to promote me, but to promote the institution, because all of a sudden GFed is in his rankings, best game atmosphere, or best tailgate. I mentioned our institutions, and he loved his experience in West Virginia. If I'm not mistaken, it may have been the Pitt game, now that I think about it. And that was an unbelievable atmosphere because, of course, that was the high water mark for us this season. We went 4-8, but hey, we beat Pitt, so that's all that matters. So it was great fun, and we've stayed in touch, and I really consider that a big win for the institutions where I've been.
I mentioned that you were a big proponent for sports. At many universities, athletics is kind of the most visible way that people encounter the institution. It's not usually on GFed social accounts. How do you think about athletics as a driver of the brand, enrollment, and really also alumni engagement?
Yeah, I have a niece that went to Alabama. My daughter's head to Auburn in the fall as a freshman. But I remember 60 Minutes did this, because I've watched 60 Minutes religiously since I was a kid. And they interviewed, at the time, the president at Alabama and said, it was back in the day when Nick Saban was, at the time, the highest paid coach, but it wasn't the salaries that we're talking about now. And the question to the president was, how do you justify the salary you're paying Nick Saban? He said, that is the best investment we've made at this institution, because at the time, Alabama was starting to focus on out-of-state recruitment. I think at one point they were close to 65, 35 out of state to in-state. It may be even higher than that now. But he said it's brought the recognition that's brought the institution, the fact that so many eyeballs are on our games on a Saturday on CBS or ESPN in primetime windows, which I've heard commentators say in effect is like a 3.5-hour infomercial for your institution. We've tried to do similar things. Our athletic director here at West Virginia is terrific. Ren Baker came here from North Texas. He said, what we do in athletics is the most visible thing, but it's not necessarily the most important thing. So at my core, I'm an academic, I'm a historian. I believe in the academic mission of our institution. But Corey, if I were to go out and do a sampling of news coverage of press clippings on West Virginia, probably north of 80% are going to be about athletics. Our men's basketball team that came back from a 14-point deficit to win the other night on the road against Central Florida. Our rifle team that's won 20 national championships. Corey, I think I told you the other day, we beat Army and Navy in a three-way meet.
Wow.
And if Air Force had been there, we could have taken the Commander-in-Chief trophy. But, our rowing team is great. Our baseball team started the season with the sweep. So you see all this news coverage and the press coverage about our teams, but I love the fact that you can take that and then do the human interest stories about that player. That for our baseball team, a kid named Weston Mazey, his dad, Randy Mazey, was our coach here and really built the program. And he's always dreamed of being on our baseball team. And Saturday night, he got his first hit as a freshman. And the story about what it took for him to get to this point. And I could go on and on about the human interest stories about student athletes, which in so many ways are that kind of that hook to get you into the institution. But athletics in so many ways is that first point of contact for people to get introduced to your school.
This episode is brought to you by Shorts Sport Travel Logistics, the fastest growing leader in college athletics travel and the trusted choice of over 108 athletic departments nationwide. With their promise, Team Travel Made Easy, Shorts simplifies every aspect of team travel: air charters, commercial flights, buses, and hotels. By turning complex logistics into a competitive advantage, they've become the trusted choice for programs committed to winning on and off the field. Thank you for joining us on the Big Business on Campus, the college sports podcast powered by Playfly Sports.
When you were at Coastal and you guys had success on the national stage, did you see a measurable impact on the university in terms of applications or donations or partnerships?
Yes, I'll back up because they added football, Corey, in 2001. So immediately, particularly male enrollment, because you had all these kids that wanted to show up and try out and play FCS, at the time, FCS football. They went Division I FBS football in 2016, joined the Sun Belt. I had been named in October of 2020. And so right in the midst of COVID is when we hosted BYU for game day. First time game day had ever come to Conway, South Carolina. And we saw, and the same thing applies to, I'll back up 20 years when I was at the University of Utah. I was at Utah when they made it to the Final Four against Kentucky. Remember Alex Smith, Alex Jensen, Alex Smith was the quarterback.
Sure. Right, 90s.
Unbelievable players that we lost to Kentucky in the finals, but we saw probably about a 30% spike in applications to the University of Utah. Same thing can be said about Coastal. That year during COVID, the Big Ten did not play. So we got all those time slots on Friday nights and Saturdays, and we were on national TV for 11 weeks in a row. And you cannot pay for that kind of exposure. So that was a huge boon for us. You go back a few years in 2016 when Coastal won the baseball national championship, which nobody thought we would do. I mean, to beat Arizona like we did in dramatic fashion. I'm sorry, Corey. I just had to throw that in there.
I knew that was a little jab.
But and they continue to do well, and they're ranked number 6 in the country right now. So there is a direct correlation between the exposure that you get through successful teams, the increase in applications, and then for us, the secret sauce was when a student came to Coastal and toured campus. Particularly they're from New Jersey or Massachusetts or New York, and they came in February, and kids are wearing shorts and flip-flops, and they say, hey, I want to go to school here. We see the same thing in West Virginia, because on a game day and a Saturday in the fall, Morgantown becomes the largest town in the entire state of West Virginia, and that's the kind of attraction that it is.
That's awesome.
The University of Arizona has a visit to Morgantown this year. I am very excited to come and visit. Sorry, Mike, go ahead. That's
right. We will see you. We'll see you then. I think it's in October.
So just to follow up on that same concept of, you can measure the applications in terms of the success in sports and seeing the application spike. How does that change your budgeting when you think about supporting the athletic department? Because the expenses are rising, right? Revenues are rising too. That's what Playfly Sports does. We're a revenue generator for
Yeah.
our colleges, so we help with that side of things. So revenues are increasing, but when you think about that as being so important for the marketing of a university and driving those metrics that you mentioned, how much do you sort of focus on supporting the athletic department to the point where it's a negative, it's a lost leader, but it's a marketing benefit for the overall organization of a university?
Well, Mike, it's a real, it's a balance one has to strike. Look, we get some nice conference revenue from the Big 12, but we're not the Big 10 and we're not the SEC. And if you look at the 16 teams in the Big 12, I like their mix of private institutions, large land grant institutions, smaller schools in more remote locations. But still in all, I mean, for what we get out of what we invest, I'm very proud of the fact that we finished, I think, 29th in the Learfield standings in the fall. Pound for pound, we get a lot out of our student athletes here, and I'm very, very proud of them. That said, our board of governors, back when I got here, I started in July, my very first meeting, they passed a resolution saying the charge to the administration and to the athletic department was they wanted to be in the upper quartile of the Big 12. Well, who does that put us up there with? I mean, Texas Tech has a billionaire supporter that I wish we did. TCU does very well. They're a private school, as is BYU. You look at the Arizona schools. Arizona State, Arizona have probably triple. Well, Arizona State has close to double the number of students that we have. But still in all, we have made it a choice that this is going to bring additional exposure, information that people otherwise may not have access to in terms of the academic programs that we have. We have an academic medical center here at West Virginia that people are learning about now, in addition to our medical system, with 25 hospitals in 4 states. So you come to Morgantown as a result of a trip maybe to go on an athletic venue, and all of a sudden you see the investment that we've made, yes, in our athletic facilities, but also campus-wide. So there's a balance one has to strike, but we've been charged that, look, we want to be competitive in the Big 12. We have one of our board members that did a lot of deals. His name is Bray Carey, who did a lot with ESPN and NASCAR. And he's a big believer that you've got to prepare yourself for that next round of change that is coming. Who knows when it's going to be? But we don't want to be on the outside looking in. We want to be in a position where academically we're up to snuff with the schools that are a member of the AAU in the Big 12. You look at the ACC, really fine academic institutions are right here in our backyard. But we also want to be competitive athletically. So there's a balance. But as I told Corey the other day when we had our conversation, look at the last 3 national championship games of football. Okay, Michigan, Washington, 2 huge land grant institutions. They're in the top 5 of research and development dollars spent every single year. I mean, billions of dollars. The next year, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Okay, this year, Indiana, Miami. All 6 of those institutions are members of the AU. So you don't have to, it's not an either or. You could be really, really good at academics, and you could be top shelf in athletics too. And that's what we're trying to do at West Virginia.
Well, Michael, I just wrote a story about the enrollment cliff, and I'm hearing a whole bunch of feedback. I don't know if anybody else is getting that. But Michael, I just wrote a story about the enrollment cliff that people are talking about. Do you see the role of athletics in higher education marketing growing as universities are increasingly forced to compete for a shrinking pool of candidates?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the number of high school graduates we're producing in West Virginia, it's going to continue to tail off. By contrast, you're going to produce 118,000 high school graduates in the state of Pennsylvania and Ohio. We produced 18,000 this last year. So the pool of potential applicants is shrinking. And so what does that mean? The competition for that pool is going to increase. It's going to become even more keen. So you got to bring your A game in terms of what you offer in terms of the academic programs. I'm a big believer that a student, when they set foot on campus, they're going to know whether or not that place is for them. It may be the feeling they get on campus in the student union or in the residence hall or at the intramural field or at the football stadium or the basketball arena. But it is really, really, I mean, it's cutthroat in terms of we're going head to head. If I drew a 150-mile radius from Morgantown, that catchment area is everything from Carnegie Mellon and Pitt and Penn State and Ohio State and Maryland and Johns Hopkins and Virginia Tech. So that's our competition. And believe me, they're going after all the in-state kids they can get, but also they're coming into, they're fishing in our waters, as they say. By the way, the western part of the state, they lose, guess who they lose so many of kids to an SEC school across the border in Kentucky. Kentucky's gotten very aggressive about coming into Western West Virginia and recruiting kids. So look, I get it. I've been at this for a long time. And that enrollment cliff, I think you can kind of counterattack it by making a case, number one, that there's a place for you somewhere along that spectrum of higher education, whether it's a 2-year degree, if it's a trade, if it's a diploma, a certificate, a 4-year degree at a large land grant or a private. But as I tell high school kids, do something. You got to do something beyond high school. And that's a challenge we have in West Virginia because we have the highest graduation rate in the country, but then we plummet to the bottom quartile in terms of participation rate in college. And we got to combat that.
One question that would be helpful to dive into, and really especially helpful for our audience, which is really high-level sports leaders, college sports leaders, even pro sports leaders as well, is to understand how the role of university president has changed over the last bunch of years when you think about athletics. And helping us understand that obviously the world as an athletic director has changed significantly in just the last 5 years, right? They are now full-fledged, business leaders as well, right? As administrators. So just be interested in hearing your view and your thoughts around the change in the university president when it comes to athletics and the role.
It's without a doubt, it's changed dramatically in my 30 years of being in higher ed. 23 as a president. And by the way, I started it as a 2-year school in Central Utah, Snow College, which had won a national championship in football in 1985. And they kind of hung their hat on that. Corey, you remember we used to play all the Arizona schools. We would go down to Pima, play them.
Pima was a national power when I was there.
Oh my word, Snow. Bronco Mendenhall was on the national championship team. Coached at BYU and Virginia, and now is at Utah State. So I've seen what it's like to see those kids really kind of grapple with lack of resources at the junior college level and then prove themselves and get a chance to kind of show what they can do at Division I. I've also seen, regional campuses that are struggling with that pinch of, when we were in Kentucky, University of Kentucky was 25 miles up the road and Louisville was 90 miles to our west. And they got all the attention. So those regional comprehensives really have to struggle with finding their place. And to now be at a Power 4 and to see the kind of money that we spend on athletics, as a president, you've got to be able to kind of handle all these sorts of different kinds of situations. In terms of hiring an athletic director, it used to be back in the day, your football coach would retire and you say, hey, why don't you give it a go to be our AD? And they would do it. And, now you see people coming out of business and industry and entertainment and college athletics, like at an ESPN or network. You look at, we were talking about Brett Yormark. I mean, here's a guy that was general manager of the Brooklyn Nets.
Yep.
And look at Tony Petiti, or look at Greg Sankey is more of a kind of the archetype that kind of made his way up through the ranks. But you're seeing more and more people, athletic directors with law degrees. Mm-hmm. The AD at Old Dominion Seelig just announced his retirement. He's got a PhD. Yep. So athletic directors have to appreciate the complexity of jobs now that are far different than from where they were even 15, 20, 25 years ago. You got to understand media contracts, apparel deals. If you're going to hire a general manager to run your football team, what your payroll looks like. Yep. I mean, all these things that even 5 years ago we wouldn't have dreamed of. So higher ed's a very different sort of place right now. But I never want us to lose sight of the fact that at our core, it's those stories of kids that were given an opportunity with a scholarship. And I hope they took advantage of it and got an education and had a chance to compete. I mean, not to use an example, but it's the quarterback that's now playing at his 7th school. We played against him when he was at Texas State, at Auburn. He was at Georgia State for a while.
Finley?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's got a couple kids, and he's making more money now as a quarterback in college than he might in the NFL. So very different world, Mike. And, college presidents have to be very adaptable. I was at our Big 12 meetings in Dallas just 10 days ago, and I looked around the table. It's a very eclectic group that maybe 20 years ago would have looked very, very different. And that's just the landscape today. So I try my best to stay current. I read D1 Ticker every morning. I watch your podcast. I listen to a lot of different podcasts to try and stay kind of conversant with the trends and the issues. And if you don't, you're going to get left behind.
And you're reading John Wall Street, of course.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Every single day.
That's what I thought. In West Virginia, the university plays an outsized role, both economically and culturally. West Virginia, the university and the health system together generate more than $14 billion in economic impact and support tens of thousands of jobs. How does that influence the way that you think about athletics and ultimately its responsibility to the state?
Good question. And I've spent the last 2 days as chair of both our hospital board and our health system board. And as you said, Corey, 25 hospitals. We just picked up 5 more hospitals in Pennsylvania. So we'll go up to 30 hospitals here by the end of the year. $10 billion in gross revenue next year. Now the largest employer in the state of West Virginia. So I get it. I understand what the university means to our state. I understand what our health system means in terms of eliminating what we call health deserts. So through access in our clinics, our extension services, we had an unbelievable gift that just literally fell in our lap a few months ago. Tom Golisano, who's married to Monica Seles. Remember her, the tennis player?
Sure.
Older gentleman who's made it his life's work now to support children's health. So he got out a map and he looked at where there were children's hospitals. And he said, I'm going to give them this amount. I'm going to give them. So he writes us a letter and says, I want to give you $25 million to the children's hospital. And our people went up to Rochester, New York to meet with them. And he said, I'm going to give you an extra $3 million so you can have a bus and in effect have a traveling clinic. And you go out to the hollers of West Virginia and take the medicine to the kids. So that's what the impact of the university. I want you to think about this. We're the only state institution that was located and born out of a state that was born in the Civil War. And we broke away from the state of Virginia. And in 1863, we became our own state. And that was on June the 20th, 1863. Less than 2 weeks later, you had 2 of the most decisive battles in the Civil War, the Battle of Gettysburg in the east and the Battle of Vicksburg in the west. So that's a really unique history, and it's a history that the people here love and cherish and value. And the university in so many ways is the embodiment of that kind of pioneering spirit. Our mascot right here. There's our mascot. There's the Mountaineer.
Yeah.
That bad boy that design was based on Jerry West. I don't know if he ever modeled for, but you talk about what the university means to the state. His number 44 has been retired in every sport at West Virginia University.
That's cool.
So, logo of the NBA and what he and people like Rod Thorne and Hot Rod Hundley meant to this state, and people, Randy Moss at Marshall. We're a small state to have 2 top 5 soccer teams, one at West Virginia, one at Marshall. In the country is really something. So I could go on and on about West Virginia. You can tell I'm passionate about it, but great state with wonderful people.
You're showing off your historian. You're showing off all your historian things with pulling out dates. Yeah, I like it. It's good stuff. So is West Virginia, the university and the hospital system, one of the largest, if not the largest employer in the state?
So the health system is the largest. So the university, and Corey mentioned it, we had an economic impact study that just came out 10 days ago. You take the two together, $14.3 billion in economic impact on the state. So, there are 11 campuses in the entire country, universities, that have 5 different schools of health. So we have School of Dentistry, School of Medicine, School of Public Health, School of Pharmacy, and School of Nursing. Mm-hmm. And that's another kind of unique calling card. So when the system was formed, I think we had 2 or 3 hospitals. In the space of the last 10 to 12 years, we've grown to that size. And it has an enormous impact for good on our entire state. The last thing I'll mention is, as a land grant, that means you have an extension service, which means in all 55 counties, there is an office of West Virginia in that county. So everything from the 4-H program to help kids, to helping with farming techniques and the latest in technology, to help with anything the university does on our main campus can be applied at these extension offices, and that's really significant too.
This episode is brought to you by Shorts Sport Travel Logistics, the fastest growing leader in college athletics travel and the trusted choice of over 108 athletic departments nationwide. With their promise, Team Travel Made Easy, Shorts simplifies every aspect of team travel: air charters, commercial flights, buses, and hotels. By turning complex logistics into a competitive advantage, they've become the trusted choice for programs committed to winning on and off the field. Thank you for joining us on the Big Business on Campus, the college sports podcast powered by Playfly Sports.
Michael, West Virginia went through a very public period of restructuring and cost cutting to address a significant budget gap. How do you balance investing in athletics while addressing broader academic and institutional priorities, as we've discussed?
Very good question, and that happened about 2 years before I got here. In fact, this week, a year ago, was when I was named president. So it's kind of a time to reflect on what's happened in the last year. But Gordon Gee was my predecessor. Everybody knows of Gordon Gee. Started his career here as president when he was 36, and then went to Colorado, Ohio State to Vanderbilt to Brown back to Ohio State, and Ohio State back to West Virginia. So the phrase "you can never go home again," Gordon proved that wrong a couple different times. Yeah. So fascinating guy, a wonderful friend. But he had to make some hard budget choices as we were facing some of that post-COVID enrollment decline. COVID did a couple of things. Number one, it proved that college kids were craving that on-campus experience. And they missed the social interaction. And I would argue that you learn as much outside the classroom as you do in the classroom. And kids were really had an almost insatiable craving to get back to that. So, there's a slight spike in enrollment post-COVID on campuses, but then was the kind of the inexorable decline that we faced in terms of declining population, and our enrollment just was going down. So anytime you have an enrollment that goes down for a freshman class, guess what? That lower number is with you for 4 years at least, as long as they stay. So you've got to make up for it exponentially moving forward. So they had to make some tough choices. They had to make some cuts. So our board meeting that starts tomorrow here on campus will be focused on things like we are going to invest in athletics. But we also are going to try to make a commensurate investment in academic programs and an innovation fund as we roll out our strategic plan. I think it's really important to but to make sure you have an equal investment in both. Because if our board says, look, we want you in the top quartile, that's going to take our share of the revenue share, which is $20.5 million this year, but it's going to go up, as you know. There's an escalator of 4% every year. NIL, we have what's called the Gold and Blue Enterprises, which in effect is what used to be the outside NIL entity. We have certainly a Mountaineer Club that raises money with ticket sales and premium seating. I'll finish with this in terms of an investment in facilities. Our Hope Coliseum, where is an iconic building, but our football stadium, where John Denver first sang Country Roads back in 1980, the press box has never been touched. It's original. So after this season, we're going to raise the west side and do a brand new stadium tower, about $150 million project. But the idea was that you'll be able to use it every day of the year. So not just for football games, it'll have space that you can rent out for meetings, receptions, a Rotary Club, a wedding, those sorts of things. So you see that everywhere. I mean, you saw it at Notre Dame, probably the most kind of stark example. $600 million football stadium renovation that now you've got the School of Music in one end zone. You've got all their media production on one side and their student and rec center on the other side. And a wonderful example that facilities can be used not just 7 days, 8 days in the fall, but year round for multiple purposes.
Yeah. How do you, on that note, on the facilities note, how do you think about private investment into facilities and thinking about mixed use elements when you're renovation of the football stadium? Is there a concept where you build out a plaza or you build out a more of a mixed use area that has retail, et cetera, maybe even a hotel to add to the mix? Is that something you've spent a lot of time on, or is that sort of down the road?
No, that's a good point, and your timing is propitious with that question because we just picked up a property adjacent to the Coliseum, an old kind of dilapidated hotel that we'll take down. And I think our AD and our staff were inspired by our trip to Kansas. We went to Lawrence this last fall for football, and you see what they've done with their Booth Stadium, Memorial Stadium. But now in the adjacent parking lot, that's going to turn into this entertainment area and the mixed use, the hotel. I think professionally, the best example I've seen is that new Truist Park where the Braves play in Cobb County, north of Atlanta. The Omni Hotel and kind of center right field there, and all the restaurants and the activities the kids can do. So you're seeing a lot more of that on the college level, and we're entertaining that very idea by our Coliseum. So stay tuned. You may hear about it here in the next little while.
That's awesome. Are you thinking about private partners for that, or is it all?
I mean, you really have to go out and get private investors for a project like that. Wake Forest. I just read about Wake Forest doing a big project. A stadium in so many ways is that iconic kind of architectural piece that is so recognizable for so many places. But sometimes it's, I think, for example, NC State, their football stadium is nowhere near campus. There's something to be said for a football stadium right in the heart of campus. And it turns out that we may be one of the only universities in America where our hospital parking lot turns into our largest tailgating lot right there next to Milan Puskar Stadium. So, Corey, when you come for a game in October, you'll see it gets a little crazy there, and they call it the blue lot. And the joke around town is don't get sick or don't break your leg on a football Saturday because it's hard to get to the emergency room.
we can get a little crazy. We'll get a little crazy. You talk about, the Battery in Atlanta, and would now responsible for roughly 10% of Braves revenues. What role do you see mixed-use development playing in the future financial model of college sports?
Well, you see a lot more, for example, outdoor concerts at a stadium. We don't have the capacity right now at Milan Puskar. You know why? It's not that we don't have enough seats or we don't have good sightlines. The tunnels for semi-access aren't large enough to back an 18-wheeler down to get all your rigging and all your staging off. So that's a challenge for us. The same goes for our Coliseum. I think we had, the Everly Brothers? They were our last show in the Coliseum, and we don't have air conditioning in there. So unless you have modern facilities where you can stage these large groups and these large shows, you're going to be in trouble. Now, that said, the Savannah Bananas are going to Coastal Carolina. They're going to play in their football stadium, and they're coming to our baseball field in June. So I'm really excited about that. But you're right, concerts, tractor pulls. We had Nitro Circus at our football stadium at Southern Utah one year before we tore up the natural grass and put turf down. And people still talk about that show. So think about the largest venues often in a community are going to be your stadiums. And so you got to figure out a way to use them and monetize all the activity that goes on inside them.
What has to be true for you talk about, stadium development projects. What has to be true financially or strategically for West Virginia to move forward with a major facilities investment?
Well, number one, you've got to find the right partner. As we're talking about our stadium project, we put it out for RFP, and there are a lot of firms out there. Is it Oakmont Group? Yeah. So I know there are a lot of entities out there that help you with things like this. We heard about the Moody Coliseum at UT that Texas doesn't even own it. I mean, it's owned by this company that helps with the the programming. I think UT gets enough game nights for basketball or days for basketball, but you have to strike that right balance between if you're going to invest like that or get some private capital to make that investment, do you still have the latitude to be able to use it the way you want? We're fortunate here that we don't have a lot of debt, and so we have some capacity that we can do some things. For whatever debt we do issue on our football stadium, it's going to be very, very short term, as in 5 years. So we're going to see if we can pay things off, because it's always good to have that capacity to free up the opportunities in the future of what may present itself.
When we're talking about sort of the financials of the or the revenue generating opportunities using athletics as a base, one of the things that I see is undermonetized is actual campus partnerships, not necessarily athletics partnerships, but campus partnerships. So looking at driving more revenue through partnerships throughout campus, whether that's, retail, whether that's signage around bus stops, et cetera, all of these different elements that could be enhanced, right? We went through so much innovation in athletics over the last 10 years in terms of creating new pieces of inventory, increasing rate cards, driving new categories of official partners, but that hasn't happened as much when it comes to campus partnerships. So just be interested in your thoughts about that. Is that an untapped environment? Playfly itself is getting into that significantly, some of our partners' schools, but just be interested if that's something you guys have looked at.
Well, I'll state the obvious because it's just happened recently, but Playfly, Learfield, the MMR deals now that are some of that revenue that's coming to campus and being redirected to NIL and to kind of rev share. So, there are ways that you can draw up these partnerships. You're right, Mike. When I was at East Kentucky, we went to Airmark, our food vendor at the time, our dining partner, and we had seen what they had done for Western Kentucky in terms of a new dining hall. And they wanted a longer contract to be able to amortize an investment, a capital investment. And we came up with the right package. And guess what? They built a $35 million dining hall right in the middle of campus for us that, in my experience, is one of the most beautiful I've ever seen. And it became this epicenter of activity. Everybody wanted to go there, yes, to eat, but to hang out with their friends and have study groups and all that sort of thing. So you're right. You have to create kind of environments, atmospheres on campus where students want to be. We had this may be a small example, but we partnered with Lululemon to kind of roll out our brand. And it was on a Friday when we dropped it at our bookstore, and there was a line around the bookstore that formed about 3:00 in the morning. And Roback, Peter Millar, Grayson, we're carrying brands now that kids like, alumni like. So those retail relationships are really key. CLC, Collegiate Licensing Corporation, they have that ranking of the kind of the top brands in terms of what they call, the shiny helmets. So, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Michigans. West Virginia and our flying WV is in the top 15.
Wow.
It's a recognizable logo that we generate a lot of royalty revenue every year. So partnerships in the form of dining, retail. Our Gold and Blue Enterprises is now tying either loyalty cards or if you go book a vacation with a tourist agency, part of that comes back to the university. So we're looking at all sorts of partnerships. That may be a small one, maybe inconsequential, but the larger ones I'm talking about, dining, and some of the other things that we're doing are really proving to be hugely beneficial.
That's great.
I want to turn the conversation back to the field for a second. West Virginia competes in a state without a population base or a corporate footprint that some of the other schools do. How do you guys remain competitive in that landscape? And I think that is going to get to one of the things I wanted to ask you about, which is your decision to charge in-state tuition to all of your student athletes. Explain how that's helped remain competitive in the current landscape.
Yeah, you're right. We have no professional teams. I found that everybody here, because Pittsburgh's only 80 miles away, they love the Steelers, they love the Pirates, they love the Penguins. Ohio State, you've got multiple professional teams in Ohio, same in Pennsylvania and Virginia. So we are the only show in town. So that's a huge benefit for us. But it's also a responsibility that, the way that the people of West Virginia feel about kind of their life and their outlook really hinges on the way 18 to 22-year-olds perform on a Saturday afternoon. So we're really keen on making sure we do the very, very best with what we've got. And it goes without saying, too, Corey, that competition for kind of people's fungible resources and their time is very keen. And you don't see students quite as excited about going to games as they were in my generation. They much rather probably sit at home and watch it on the big screen TV, or maybe do something else besides spend 4.5 hours going to a game. We've tried to make that game day experience an all-day affair where you come and tailgate, you come to the stadium early, you hear the band play, you stick around after we win and they sing Take Me Home Country Road. So all of those kind of in-game experiences that really make it memorable, I think, are really, really key. You asked me a second question, and now I forgot what it was.
The second question was related to, so you were talking about in-state, exactly.
So when I first got the job, I got a call from our baseball coach, Steve Sabins, and he called to congratulate me. And I told Ren Baker I was going to call him back, or AD, because I always want to make sure he knows when I'm talking to his coaches. And I said, Coach Sabins, what's one thing we could do to help your team? And he said, well, our postseason roster is going to have probably 2 kids from the state of West Virginia on that roster. And I'm spending all this money on out-of-state tuition for every single non-state resident. So we had it in the past. I don't know why it went away, but the fact that you could now make in-state tuition for every single student athlete on every single roster, that has an enormous consequence especially for Olympic sports. So Coach Sabins doesn't have to worry about, I can't afford this left-handed pitcher out of Atlanta. So, or I may have to go get this other kid from in-state because I can't afford the out-of-state tuition. So this goes into effect fall of this year for every single roster. So now coaches are going and saying, you're going to, the cost of attendance for you is the in-state rate. And now I can use other resources for my rev share or for investments in other areas of our program. We have, by the way, one of the best, if not the best, biomechanics facilities in terms of pitching and hitting at our baseball field. It's named for Ken Kendrick. Ken Kendrick, the owner of the Arizona Diamondbacks, one of our graduates. And he says it's as nice as anything in Major League Baseball. So, those investments that you can make if you're not worrying about paying out-of-state tuition for a member of your roster, and you know that everybody is in state for soccer, rowing, softball, basketball, baseball, tennis. This is a huge advantage.
So when you think about the Super League concept that's being thrown around for football, and football kind of breaking away into more of a professional media rights model, is that something that you look at from the stage at West Virginia as something positive? Is that something you think you guys have a potential risk at not being included in? And do you think differently about it? Or do you think that'll rise all boats and will be good for the ecosystem?
Well, one of my good friends during my time at Coastal was Joe Moglia. And Joe was the former CEO of Ameritrade, missed college football, so he came back and coached for us at Coastal. He's on Squawk Box. He's on Fox Business. Joe is one of the smartest business people I've ever met. And he's convinced the Super League is going to happen. Yep. When, who's to say? But Mike, to your question, in the last 3 weeks, you've had 3 FBS Group of 6 FCS schools say, "Hey, we want to be in a FBS conference." So you've got North Dakota State, which has been a perennial power forever. You've got Sacramento State that's paying $18 million to go play in the MAC just for football.
Yep.
Third is, who is the third? Sacramento State. Northern Illinois. Yeah. Northern Illinois is now going to the Mount West, I think.
Yeah.
I think a football-only Super League is inevitable. Yeah. What I hope will happen is that if we focus on that and that has some semblance of sanity, then you go back to, all right, let's go to those regional rivalries and not forcing your volleyball team to go from Los Angeles to New Jersey for a volleyball match midweek when academics are going to suffer. So, I don't mean to sound like Pollyanna, but at the end of the day, we still have to talk about academics and about graduation rates and about what this whole enterprise is about, and that is access to education and getting a degree, because very few of our students are going to play professionally. So if a super league in football helps football to kind of take care of itself, and we all know it drives the ship, but these other Olympic sports can compete and do so more on a more reasonable plane, I'm all for it.
That's great.
Michael, as you look ahead 5 years from now, how do you define success for West Virginia athletics and for the university more broadly?
Well, I would first say enrollment. We've got to continue to grow. Number two, we've got to raise money, not just from the state or from federal grants and contracts, but we've got to engage our 210,000 living alumni. And the way you engage them is you make them even more proud of that diploma that hangs on the wall. And you do that by investing in their alma mater, making them more proud of the reputation it has, of its academic successes. Our moonshot is that we've talked about joining the AAU, the Association of American Universities. That's going to be a tough thing. Corey, your alma mater is a member of the AAU. They've been in there for a long time. There are 5 members of the Big 12 that are in there. So I would gauge the success of the university on how the alumni feel about their alma mater. But athletically, how are we doing at the conference level? Are we competing for conference championships? And do we have a chance at a national championship? Our rifle team has now won its 20th national championship. I don't know if too many teams that can say they've won 20 national championships. But, baseball, we've been to 2 super regionals back to back. Gymnastics is always good. I really hope our basketball team will continue to kind of climb. We'll see how we do tonight. Football, the fact that the Big 12 had one of our member schools in the playoff didn't do so well, but we got absolutely shellacked by Texas Tech. So we've got to do better in some areas, but I'm very sanguine about where we're headed athletically. But academically, Corey, 5 years from now, I want our enrollment to be solid. I want our endowment to grow. I want their alumni to be proud of their alma mater. And I hope through our medical system, we're making a difference every single day in the lives of West Virginians by providing access to affordable, wonderful healthcare.
Awesome. Well, I think that comes up for us on the time here. This has been amazing. Thank you again, Michael. Again, this is West Virginia President Michael Benson. Thank you for joining us. We learned a ton, not only about how to operate an amazing university that you're operating and leading, a health system, a hospital, but also we learned about how to engage social media and inviting them not to break into your stadium, right? And we learned the exact date West Virginia became a state as well, which I did not know. So
1863, there you go.
Lots of value here for our audience. This was a fun one for us. So thank you for joining us on Big Business on Campus podcast by John Wall Street, powered by Playfly Sports and sponsored by Shorts Travel. So thank you again, Michael, for joining us here today. This has been really a lot of fun.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks
again. Michael, and for those out there who are listening, there'll be a quiz, shortly. So. Thanks again for listening, guys.